Welcome to TechTalk Podcasts by Certes IT Service Solutions. In today's episode, our host, Jon Grainger, invites Director of Transformational Change, Jo Peacock, to debate, is ITIL 4 overhyped and overrated? They will discuss the evolution and history of ITIL and the purpose of ITIL. Let's dive into part one.
We've got quite an interesting topic. So this is the sort of the ITIL 4. Is it hyped? Is it overrated? And I suppose we want to make sure this isn't a give ITIL a kicking session, but it's kind of exploring some of those challenges to ITIL and then maybe how people are thinking about it, and also what your personal view is. This is our exam question, which is ITIL 4 overhyped and overrated? So, Jo, I'm going to let you lead the way. But before we dive into it, I see you as a transformational and governance expert. I'm going to call you an expert, Jo. Just give us a little bit about who's Jo. What's your background? What gets you up in the morning? What's your passion?
I guess my passion is for people. And anybody that sort of interacts with me usually will tell you that my passion is for people. My passion is in helping. My passion is in making changes that are delivering changes that stick and changes that deliver value. I think there's very little importance or not enough importance that's placed on the human side of IT. And I think that we forget that there are people at the end of IT. And so one of my huge passions is really to remember the person within IT and to deliver change that delivers value to the person at the end. You know, I tell a little story sometimes, which is not, it's funny when you're listening to it. It's not funny in the moment. I had a car accident a little while ago, very, very minor. And I had to call my insurance company whilst I was there at the site. It's sort of the thing that we do. We have to call the police, and then we also have to call the car insurance company. And I was on the phone to my car insurer, and I got one of these automated voice recognition systems that you do when you call this particular insurer. And the question that it asks is, do you want auto or do you want home insurance? So I stand there in the road with my car shouting at my phone. And I say shouting, and I was, because I was trying to get the word auto out. Now, I live in the US. And I live, I use all of US, all of the infrastructure of the US. So my insurance company obviously is American. This system does not recognize my accent. I can say the word auto till I am blue in the face, and
Yes.
It will not recognize me whatsoever. So in the end, I'm in the middle of an accident situation, and I have to go to the cop and just say to the cop, "Excuse me, could you just say the word auto?" and hand my phone to him. And he looked at me as though I was absolutely crazy. I said, "Just ignore it. Just say the word auto. Please, just say it." He did. And I got through to speak to somebody. But that's my little story that I tell. It's amusing, but it's when we forget about the human at the other end of IT. IT
Absolutely.
works great.
Yeah.
But when we forget about that person,
Yes.
that's a problem. And it affects me personally. So I guess that's what helps me to be passionate about that, because it's me.
Yeah, absolutely, Jo. And it's a theme actually in a lot of the sessions that we've had. I use this terrible sort of tech phrase, which is it's more lies in the carbon than it does in the silicon. But certainly, if you lose sight of that end goal, you're really completely missing the point. But I was just wondering if we could sort of dive into ITIL now. It might be useful for folks. I mean, some folks watching will be very familiar with ITIL. Others will have heard of the 4 letters, but maybe not entirely certain what it is. So maybe we could tee it up with what ITIL is. Kind of what was it kind of created to solve, or what problem was it solving? How did it kind of enter stage left?
When I'm talking about ITIL and the origins of ITIL, I always go back to right at the very, very beginning, and ITIL version 1, really. And ITIL was created as a framework. We don't talk about best practice originally. It was created as a framework to help the UK government managing IT in a way that was efficient and effective. We were in the 1980s spending taxpayer money on IT, and we had to demonstrate that we were spending that money efficiently, and that therefore we were managing our IT effectively. And so what happened was the UK government commissioned a study and got a load of experts together and went out and said to them, gave them the directive, go out to lots and lots and lots of different organizations, all types of organizations, and find out how they're running this technology and work out what's an efficient way to run the technology and what's an inefficient way to run the technology. And then we're going to get it back together and we're going to create a sort of a white paper, a best practice guide for how we should run IT in a way that's efficient and effective. And that's basically where ITIL first started. They came back with a very detailed 40-odd books worth of, of best practices that were in use in all different types of organizations around the world that worked and that were considered to be efficient. And so this is where the best practice came from. And then over the years, we've had various evolutions. My personal favorite is version 2. I like version 2. However, version 2 was considered to be incredibly prescriptive, but it wasn't. If you knew how to approach ITIL, it wasn't prescriptive. It was never ever designed to be inflexible. It was never designed to be a one-size-fits-all or plug-and-play model of managing services. But the beauty of ITIL was that it was freely available. Because it was owned by the government, it was freely available, and organizations realized very quickly that if they implemented a version of ITIL, if they implemented a framework, then actually it would make their IT services more efficient and more effective. The other sort of beauty of ITIL is this common language. When I talk to somebody, even now, and they haven't experienced any ITIL at all, and I ask them what an incident is, and they'll come up with a lot of different, explanations about what an incident is. Everybody that's been through ITIL training can tell me that an incident is an interruption to or a reduction in the quality of a service. That's what an incident is. It's a common language. I live in the US now, as I mentioned, and I always joke that we are two countries divided by a common language because, there are some things that we just don't agree on when it comes to the words that we use. But it really is, ITIL has that beauty of having that common language, which makes our interactions and our relationships with our suppliers, with our partners, so much more efficient and smoother, because we understand what each other are saying. We don't have to explain how we work. We understand how each other works. So ITIL version 2 gave a set of practices and sample practices. This is what incident management could look like. This is what change management could look like. And I can still recite all of those practices now, or those processes now. The problem was that in giving that set of examples, a lot of organizations took that and said, oh, great, it's plug and play. We can just take this and we can apply it. I'll guarantee that won't work.
Yeah.
And it was never ever designed to work like that.
Yeah.
But that's how a lot of organizations took it on. And so version 3, it removed that prescriptive nature. It took away the examples and said, we're not giving you examples anymore. And it brought in and added with the 2017 update, it brought in and added ITIL practitioner, which was really focused on how we implement ITIL, how we consider the people, how we consider transformational change, how we can consider making improvements that stick. And then version 4 has carried on that evolution to a point where now we're saying, okay, this is the definition of an incident. Now go away and create an incident process that's right for you and for your organization. Yeah. And I know that we're going to get into this in a little while, but whether that's a little bit too diluted or not, that's the question.
Trying to get the right balance. I mean, Jo, I was around when ITIL came out, and I was in the private sector. And I didn't think of it at the time, because this is all the benefit of hindsight, isn't it? But my view is that whatever its shortcomings were when it first came out, it was better than the chaos that existed at the time. There was no kind of standard to go to. There was a few things in project management like Prince, but there just wasn't this kind of. I suppose the sector was growing so quickly. So many companies were adopting technology that there just wasn't anything to kind of to refer to. So I think sometimes when people criticize the early frameworks, they forget that you have to start somewhere. And that literal interpretation, Jo, that you're talking about, where people look at it and say, right, we're just literally going to take exactly what we've seen and we're going to apply it over here. I mean, that occurs in all domains, doesn't it? Again, we don't want to get political, but it happens in every area of life where something gets written down and suddenly it becomes a literal, people aren't using judgment. So it's really interesting that you're talking about the examples going away, and then maybe four's got to the other way with the sort of the dilution. But also there's other standards have also emerged, haven't they, over this 20 years or so, like Agile and DevOps and those sorts of things. How do you see those two kind of coming in with where ITIL's at the moment?
I think that where ITIL is as a framework, I think is, we've evolved to ITIL 4, where it is, I use the word diluted because compared to version 2, it's incredibly diluted in its guidance, should we say. It doesn't have that prescriptive nature. But that is because, ITIL 4 is, and ITIL 3 started this, I've got to say, but ITIL 4 has definitely moved to try and be more agile, to try and allow more flexibility within our IT services. And that's where ITIL 4 does have a huge advantage over the others, in that we're considering agile now, we're considering flexibility, we're considering the iterative nature of making changes and making improvements. We're using the same language as agile. We're using the same language as DevOps. So we're not alienating ourselves. I think before, ITIL really stood on its own as a framework for service management. And I always likened this. There was this huge wall that existed between service management and project management. And ITIL came along and said, no, that doesn't exist. That's just part of design and development. That's what project management fits in here. So fits inside ITIL. Whereas a lot of the project management purists, and I speak as somebody who, by the way, is I lecture in project management as well, so I'm not sitting on either side of that fence. But a lot of the project management purists came along and said, no, this is a completely different discipline. We are two different disciplines. But what happened was that there was a wall that was created between the two. And it's very often seen and still seen. And we're trying to break down that wall. And people like me, I think, are huge, big advocates for trying to demolish that wall. That there's not two different factions. There aren't two different sides. It's all one. It's all IT. And we're here to serve our customers. That's what we're here for. And so Agile should be incorporated into our service management. We should understand Agile practices. There's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't all, in every single environment, whether you're on a help desk or wherever you are in IT, why aren't you having a daily stand-up? Why aren't you? Just because it happens to be in an Agile book, it's something that we can all benefit from. Why aren't we having reviews and retrospectives on everything that we do? With every major incident, we should have both a review and a retrospective. We should look at what happened from a technical standpoint and say, okay, what happened? But then we should also have that retrospective that looks back at the team and says, how did we manage it? Could we have done better?
Yeah.
So I think we have to get better at, I don't want to say marrying the two, because we're not. We really need to become one as one discipline rather than two separate disciplines with two separate camps. And I really try to advocate sort of breaking that down.
Yeah. Now, we've got some folks watching who will be not, they might not be on the sort of the IT side of technical. So they might be people that are more kind of receiving services from their technology team, or they're going to be service management folks who are trying to maybe convey the message to the business about what ITIL could bring. So if you were talking to a non-technical person and you were, in quotes, selling ITIL, I don't mean that in a negative sense, but you were sort of saying, okay, so what's it going to bring to our business? How is it going to help? How would you position that sort of conversation?
Consistency. That's really what when I talk about ITIL from a marketing perspective, I think about consistency, I think about efficiency, I think about effectiveness, and I think about having a set of expectations that are managed. There's nothing worse as an end user, as a customer, than trying to get hold of someone in IT because something's not working. And invariably, as an end user, when you come to IT, you either want something or something's broken. They're the two scenarios that you come to IT with. So you want that interaction to be smooth, but you also want to know what to expect. There is nothing worse than, as an end user, as a customer, to have somebody turn around and say, okay, leave it with me, I'll get back to you. They are probably the most dreaded words that any customer could ever hear. Because you always, as a customer, we all feel exactly the same as, yeah, okay then. Like that's ever going to happen. If we manage expectations and we manage those expectations with consistency, then there should never ever be that fear of dread. So from a customer standpoint, I'm expecting ITIL to deliver that consistency, but I'm expecting ITIL to deliver assurance. And that's the assurance of managed expectations. And that's what ITIL should do. I'm I'm also a champion of the service desk. I really, really believe that the service desk are invaluable in our IT. And we should do our best to nurture our service desk because they provide that service and that support to our customers, but they also are the window to IT. That's what your customers see. As far as they're concerned, that's IT, and that's what they see. So if the service desk is not managed in an efficient way, if they don't understand the difference between an incident and a problem, for instance, and then they don't understand that we can solve one probably a lot quicker than we can solve the other one, so let's focus on that. If your service desk and your support people don't understand that, then we're not going to be able to deliver that consistency of service. And when I talk about agile and I talk about continuous sort of development and continuous implementation, I always reference the fact that we all have a cell phone now. We all have a mobile phone. And we never know when it's updated. We don't. You just all of a sudden pick it up and you see the little thing spinning and you say, oh, okay then, this app's been updated. And it's an unfortunate thing, but our customers and our users only ever notice the development side of IT and the project management side of IT when it goes wrong. That's when they notice that. But they do notice our support when it goes right, as well as when it goes wrong. And that's what ITIL can do. It can bring in that consistency. It can manage those expectations. And eventually, if we are managing our IT efficiently, then we should also notice a reduction in support costs. We should notice a reduction in costs overall on service provision.
Cool. So Jo, I started out on the service desk, or the help desk as it was called back in the day. And I'm really, really glad I did. I wasn't particularly happy at the time. It was really hard work and lots and lots of trepidation trying to resolve things. And I wasn't entirely certain, why they'd gone wrong or what my role in it was. But the shop front or the face of IT, it's so true. And we all know the difference between calling up someone on the phone who's really engaged, being supported. You can hear it in their voice, versus the person who's, quite frankly, hasn't got the support or might not have and the organization they work in might not understand the difference between an incident and a problem, a service request, and all these different things, and therefore you've got that kind of that chaos. So that really does chime with me. I think one of the things I'd say, Jo, in terms of just take the incident, or that just take the service desk actually, and you were talking about the design organization and the kind of the service organization. Do you think that if there's a risk, and this might be more of an implementation risk rather than something inherent in ITIL, that people can misunderstand that? What I meant was that the person on the service desk was able to recognize that the call that was coming in was an incident and therefore needed to be treated differently from I need a new phone. So there's some sort of prioritization. Have you ever seen that, or do you think there are countermeasures or things you can do to avoid that situation? I mean, you might not have encountered it.
From the service desk perspective, if the service desk have got and this is where ITIL does come into this, if the service desk have got a very structured set of processes, and if the tool that supports these processes is set up in the correct way, then again, I expect a service desk analyst to be building knowledge over time and to be aware of certain issues that come into the service desk, and to build their experience over a period of time. But the tool should also compensate. When we think about AI, and we think about the fact that most of our tool manufacturers now, our vendors are actually delivering AI built into their software tools. So when you go to any tool and you type something and you raise a record, it doesn't matter what the record is, whether it's an instant, whether it's a request, it doesn't matter. You raise a record, and the minute you start typing, it should be prompting for, this is what we did, this is what we've seen in the past. Did you mean this? Did you mean that? And it should be prompting with questions for the users. It should be prompting with, the next steps for the process for our service desk analysts. So there's absolutely no way that the tool should allow the service desk analyst to flounder and not know what the next step should be. Now, would it be great? I would, and definitely I would encourage the service desk analyst to be learning and to be understanding what's happening behind the service desk in IT. Do they have to know right at the very beginning? If we've got a tool that can assist and can facilitate, and it's been configured correctly, then I don't want to say it's not so important, because it is, but I do think that they can be helped. We can still have, very valuable interactions if we've got all of our supporting structure in place.